Hello, dear students. Once again, welcome to another discussion of your mains essay paper. We've had our essay paper very recently, and as you can see, we have few topics that we have to discuss and a general overview of how the paper went and how students, there's a certain reaction among students regarding this paper, etc. So this is all what we are going to discuss in this session that is there. First of all, to much relief of a lot of students who wrote this year's mains, this year's papers, you were actually spoiled for choice when it came to the different kinds of topics that were there in this paper. Why? Because a lot of times in the last few years, when you look at the general pattern of your essay papers, what happens is that you've had two sections. Obviously, you have a part, the first part and the second part, and you have 4 topics in each. But in reality, the type or the kind of topics that you could write about were very limited. Why? Because if you had 4 topics also, maybe there's just 2 topics in it which is quite, you can understand it, you can generate points on it. For example, last year we had a topic about mathematics and music and everything. So what happens is students who were not able to quickly relate it to different dimensions would generally skip that topic. So what happens is, in turn, a large majority of the students would just get filtered down to writing 2 topics amongst in each of these sections. Like, there would be a popular topic that is there. As opposed to this trend, this year the paper had so many, I am pretty sure that the examiner will not get bored on reading the essays. Why? Because you've had so many variety topics that gave you a lot of scope to generate points and to write in detail also. So on that level alone, you can say that this is the reason why even after the essay paper, students were generally quite happy with it, because the difficulty level of the paper in comparison to the last few years was very, very less. The difficulty was very less. If I had to put it into terms, in last year and all, in each of the section, if you had to, even if you take up the discussion that we had last year, which is posted on YouTube itself, regarding last year's topics, one of the first things that I started off the discussion with was the fact that amongst the 4 topics, we clearly had popular topics and we had not so popular topics. This year, we don't have a categorization like that. Most of the topics were, in fact, all of the topics were stuff that you could generate points about, and you had good amount of content to be written on. So that talks on one level, that kind of ease of generating dimensions leads to the fact that these topics or these areas could have been written in a good manner. So because of the ease of writing, yes, that difficulty was something that was sorted for the students. Coming to the familiarity of topics, now here is where this is one thing you have to understand. In the sessions that we had given to our TLP students and everything, one of the first things that we had done when it came to our essay discussions was that, especially for this year's mains, we had taken certain core ideas and we had brainstormed it in, we had literally fleshed it out entirely. Like, for example, power, responsibility, fear, happiness. There are certain very recurrent areas that were expected to come, and we had flushed it out completely. So this is the reason why when I saw the paper this time, I was mighty pleased. Why? Because the familiarity of topics, it was much in line. So every year before a mains exam, those who've been very seriously preparing, the aspirants who are in the loop of preparation do have a clear idea or a trend into what kind of topics could come for your essay. So we prepare on all of those topics, right? It's like, for example, for a really long time, we knew women was a topic that could generally come. We knew about the fact that when it comes to past, that is something that could come. So what happens is we generally prepare the different dimensions, get good examples, get good stat and everything that we can collect on it. in this aspect is where we had prepared on happiness and power and responsibility and all of these topics, and very, very pleased at the fact that these topics just came directly. You could just put in all the dimensions that we had discussed over there directly into your essay when it came to these topics. So the familiarity of topics also, for a large number of students, it did reduce the difficulty of the paper. So on both of these aspects, when I'm looking at it, for example, how these of generating dimensions and also how prepared you are on these topics, on both of these aspects, if I had to compare with last year's topics or last year's essay, mains essay paper which is there, this paper clearly fared as a considerably good paper. Not only last year's, if I take 2023 to 2021, when I compare at least the last 4 years of paper, I would say the last time a paper was this simple was maybe in 2018-19 period. Before that, I mean, after that, we've not had something where you had a relative ease when it came to both the sections. So now with that, let's have a look at a quick overview. We won't be talking about the entire content you can write, but what can be expected from you in different topics that is there. That is what we are going to discuss right now. So the first topic that had to be discussed is forests precede civilizations and deserts follow them. Okay, this is a topic which has a very clear impact on an environment aspect. So they've clearly, the theme of the topic is somewhere over there. But again, do we or can we have any other dimensions added onto it? That is something that we're going to explore right now. So when they say forests precede civilizations and deserts follow them, it somehow gives the idea that, see, okay, let's for the sake of giving you a complete picture of it. When we are in prelims, we do study about something called as ecological succession, right? What is ecological succession? You have different layers, different levels preceding one another, succeeding one another, to a point where the final ecosystem that is there, it is somewhat like, for example, if you start off from a marshland on a lichen or something, you have different stages where one set of community just gets replaced by a second set of community, or the first set clearly remains, some part of it remains, and then you have the second set coming in. You have a higher evolved plants coming in. Associated with the plants, you have animals coming in, and then what happens? It turns into a completely different ecosystem. Sometimes that ecosystem gets destroyed, and then what you have is, again, you go back, you have to start from a different stage which is there. See, now that is ecological succession. What they're trying to tell us over here is another kind of a succession actually. They're saying there is forest preceding civilization, which means that the layer or the level that is there before civilization is something that is a forest, and then after the civilization, you have deserts. This is what the topic is trying to say, which means this is also some kind of a succession, but not a very happy succession, I would say. Why? Because desert, when you think of a desert, it's not in giving you very bountiful, very flourishing ecosystem. What is it giving you? Instead, it's giving you something dry and arid and lacking any life. That is what is there. So now, on the other hand, when you look at forest, the first image that comes to your mind, or the first thought that comes to your mind, is something which is having so much of life, so much of vigor, so much of bountiful resources which are there. And then you have in the middle, you have civilization. Now, the topic is trying to say or establish to us that somehow, whatever has so much of life and bounty and resources and everything, then you have civilization after it. Civilization here is seen like some kind of I wouldn't say a negative concept, but civilization is much. What is civilization when we talk about it? It's very organized life. In the form of, you organize life in the form of societies, communities. You have certain additional functions that help you flourish in that life that is there. So this is all what is civilization. So you have health, you have education, you have agriculture, you have industry. These are not what is civilization. These are just aiding civilization, which is trying to make sense of, what is life around us. Right? Now, the thing about this topic is, if you have to explore it in this manner, you have to first see the idea that they are saying that there is some kind of life, and then you're making sense of the life. And once you start making sense of the life, then you don't have it anymore. Got it? So you have forests, which is replicating or which is related to life and resources and the amount of, the flourishing that is there. You are using it and trying to make sense of it in the form of civilization. So you use the resources of forest, you use the people, or you use the content which is there in forest, you use the services that this life can give you, and you make sense of life, you create things out of life. And once that happens, when you are making sense of something, what happens is you in turn start losing what is there originally. How does that happen? I'll give you one example. Just hear me out over here. For example, let's take something that we all know. Okay. You have forests giving you different kinds of, fruits and different resources like that. Food, quantitative resources like that. Now, you take the quantitative resource, and in your civilization, what has happened is you either try collecting it or you try making money out of it. You try to sell it, and it gets into some other job, some other thing. So you're selling off that forest produce which is there. Now, obviously, when you sell it off, the forest produce is not there anymore, but it has now taken the role of, or it has taken a very transactional thing. It has now become money, right? So now something that existed in the forest is just a resource has now had an added value to it. Okay. So now you do see that resource in the terms of this value and not as the resource alone. So you say that you don't talk about honey anymore. Instead, you say that, okay, this is what the honey is worth. So you make money out of it. Now, in the long run, what happens is this money is what becomes reflective of these different kinds of resources. So slowly what has happened is, earlier something that was just seen as a resource is now taking the form of something else that is related to civilization. Got it? Now, when you take the form of that, on one hand, it's a good thing because you earn money out of it. But on the other hand, you become bereft. You are losing the concept that this has to be protected for its intrinsic value, which is like, for example, you have honey and you have to protect it, or this is honey as it is. You are losing that concept, and what have you gained out of it? You are now saying that this is a minor forest produce that can be sold for money. Civilization takes you till there. But what happens after that is, you do not find value in intrinsic things, or you do not see things for its intrinsic value. So this concept of desert, which is seen over there, can be the fact that when you do have civilizations, you start losing things that originally were there in some form. You do not see things for its intrinsic value. You belittle things. You change the form of things. So what has happened over here? It's not just the creation of barren lands, which is not having any resource, but deserts are also very, very reflective of barren mines. barren thoughts, etc. Got it. Now think of the topic in this manner. If I were to write on this, forests precede civilizations and deserts follow them, I would obviously have focus on the environment aspect of it, because we have to discuss the environment aspect of it as to how or what is this concept of civilization and why is there this differentiation? Is there even a differentiation? No, see, when you look at it, actually you cannot say, okay, there were forests over here, then civilization started and then all the forests got lost. That's not how it happens. Civilizations which do not care for the preservation of these is what leads to deserts. Okay, if you look at it from a very environment point of view, that is what you can write. But at the same time, this forest and deserts could also be talking about how much of we feel flourished. What makes a human feel flourished? We feel flourished when we have a sense of community. We feel flourished when we are filled with good values. We feel flourished when we are engaged in good actions, good conversations, we are helping people, etc. Right? So that flourishes, or that idea of flourishing is what is related to the forests. And the fact that when we proceed as a civilization, we lose some part of it. We turn ourselves into something else. And then what happens is we don't feel that happy. We don't feel flourished enough. We feel barren. We feel infertile. And that is something equivalent to your deserts. So my strategy for this topic would be start off on the environment note, but slowly take the examiner to the idea that the forests and deserts over here are not just physical forests and deserts, but even civilization does, if not taken in properly, civilization does have the impact to have the forest and the deserts in our minds also, in our thoughts and in our values also. So this is where an added dimension of this would be. And I would I would bring the ecological succession angle, because see, the forest that happened over here, because as a student of environment, you also know that the forest didn't just spring up. Before the forest, what did you have? You did have barren land. And then you flourished it, you grew it, and you did things. And then naturally is where it became the forest. And then forests happen, then you have civilization, and then it goes back into desert, which is also hope. The fact that yes, from the deserts, you can again get back to forests, provided you do enough or you try to preserve it in the manner it is. Got it. So my idea over here would be to connect this topic to the idea of ecological succession, show to the examiner the fact that, see, it's not a necessity that you have to show ecological succession, but I do feel when you bring in that concept, it becomes very clear to the examiner that, yeah, this is just a passing phase. This is nothing permanent, that where you have forest and then that's civilization comes and it's done and dusted, that you will have desert for all. Because if you do have deserts, that is also showing hope that yes, you can have forest much later on. So I would try to pitch it on those lines and try to generate points on the aspects of this idea where, forests and deserts can be of the mind and the values and the thoughts that we have also. Okay. So I hope this is clear. So see, each of these topics, when I saw it first, I sat and I was just brainstorming it. I was very excited because I really felt that, each of these topics could be related to something that we know. And in fact, it would have been so much more better if you could write on all of these topics actually, because there's so much of content that you could share and, show different perspectives over here. So this time I'm telling you this, those who've written the paper this time, you're going to see clear variations in the essay marks. You're going to see top marks coming in the range of 135, 140 ranges. And you're not just going to see one or two people in that range. You're going to see multiple people in that range, because this topic gives you the scope, not only this topic, all of these topics give you the scope to actually explore a lot of different dimensions in a very interesting manner. Moving forward, the next topic that we have to discuss is the empires of the future will be the empires of the mind. This again, it's clearly indicating to one thing, right? So let's try to focus on why are they speaking about the mind so much. So they're saying the empires of the future will be the empires of the mind, and I am pretty sure those who read the topic then and there would first think about, oh yeah, this is about artificial intelligence. This is about that. Okay, but that is where you have to start off, obviously, but you have to get it out a little bit more. So I am trying to explore it in this manner. What are the empires? Now they're talking about the empires of the future. What are the empires of the current and what are the empires of the past? How did we have empires of the past? What did we do over there? Let's take in a very realistic sense the empires of the past. We've had the very famous the British Empire, which is there, and then you have had so many Western civilizations which are there. These are the empires of the past. What were they like? The empires of the past, they were built on might. And it can be different kinds of might. It can be physical might. It can be economic might. Now, if I had to put it into even perspective, you would see that it starts off again with physical might, and then moves on to the economic might that's created out of it. So you have different things like industrial revolution, you have colonization that happens, you have wars that are fought. These are all empires of might. Trying to show your physical strength, trying to show your military strength, and trying to create empires out of it. So there is this famous political scientist called as Francis Fukuyama who had mentioned about the end of history. Okay, so it's in his very famous work that is there. I'm pretty sure PSIR students who are collecting codes and learning would have heard about him. So the idea is we've had might. We've had different kinds of empires after that, and this is all part of our history, but very soon the different kinds of ideologies or everything or whatever is the different kinds of things that were there that were creating these empires would come to an end, and then history would end, not in the sense of there would not be any happenings or anything. The find that you will not have anything new coming up in the next in the future to come is what he believed. Now, this is where I want to start my, start off this topic that is there. So see, but at the same time, Francis Fukuyama also said that history is a very evolutionary process. And as you know, anything which has that evolutionary state of it, it does not come to a complete stop. Even as we speak right now, even as we are existing in this world, we are undergoing changes. We are somehow evolving into something better, or some of us are not even evolving, and we will get weeded out in the large scheme of things. So, when you have empires of might that were built on economic and military might and weapons and everything, which is somewhat very physical in the sense something that's very quantifiable. So for example, you say, yes, Britain was an empire. Why was Britain considered an empire? Britain was rich. Britain had a lot of colonies. Britain exerted power over a lot of other territories which is there, and that was very quantifiable. You could see it. But if I had to move forward, as we went through different wars, we had the First World War, we had the Second World War, we had the ensuing Cold War and things like that, people started getting disillusioned with the empires of the past. Because see, for a large extent, why do you think when Britain goes for war, people are ready to send their, sons and husbands and people into the war? That's because they feel like, yes, if we go for the war, we might be protected. But the wars and the continuous things or the continuous crises that the world suffered led the people to understand that no, none of this is going to protect us. If we have to protect ourselves, we have to have our own concepts, we have to have our own thoughts, we have to have our own values and everything that protect us. But it will not be with the physical might that these empires hold. Got it? So this disillusionment of the people with the empires of the past is what led slowly and slowly to have prominence, not for physical might and military might and everything, but for certain other concepts. What started becoming important then? And this is where you start understanding ideologies started becoming important. Different lines of thought started becoming important. Okay, so for example, people started realizing that instead of having might or different, the kind of things that you could just push people into believing certain things, using your force and putting them into jail and, putting their military might into it, what started happening is people started thinking that yes, if you need to convince someone, you need to convince them at a much more deeper level. And that can only come from when you try to convince people from the mind. And this is where it starts, or that part of history begins, wherein you stop having people with you don't consider the most, colonized country or the colonizer country to be the powerful one. You instead say that, no, you guys are actually denying people of basic freedoms. You people are going into other countries and ruining other countries. So that idea that, this is actually colonization, this is not the idea of, exerting power, and what they're doing is not really a great thing, started coming up. So that is one idea wherein it had such repercussions, wherein people understood the fact that no, we are actually just being trapped by these mighty empires and we need to break free. And that is where you have string of countries coming out and claiming their independence. So now I've been talking about it all from this aspect, but think about it. Look at every other thing that has happened after that. So for example, you've had countries claiming independence. You've had countries trying out different political ideologies. In the same world, you have countries which are backed by communist ideologies. You have countries which are backed by democracy. You've had countries backed by monarchy. Now, it was left to the people. So when I'm saying empires of the mind, it basically says that to be able to choose what they want and what they don't want. Okay, so that started becoming an overarching thing. So you had empires of the mind coming up. Now leave the empire part. You had free thinking people coming up. So this is the reason why each country out there, now we being democracies, we say that, oh no, democracy is the best thing. But then there are countries where you have monarchies working really well for them. You have, in fact, there are certain countries where your military dictatorship is actually considered good for the people over there because they somehow seem to flourish well when you have military authoritarian rule and not when you have democratic structures over there. So the idea over here came, and rather than having a one fit all, like, you are the powerful one and you have to listen to whatever they are saying, what has happened over here is people started thinking on their own. And suddenly, Even previously, people used to start have thoughts on their own. But what is the difference right now? The difference right now is the fact that they are now very clearly sure that the empires of the past are not right, because they didn't have anything good coming out of it. So now when they start thinking on their own is where what started happening. You have every new thing, the fight against racism, the fight against your communities, which are, the colonizer countries which are there. Then these are all fights against past ones. What also started happening is you also started having empires of the future, which is thinking of newer concepts. And then you have IT coming up. You have information technology, you have internet coming up, you have thoughts about space coming up, you have thoughts about newer fields of. So here, when it comes to the empires of the mind, here what has happened is the previous disillusionment has led to all of these new sections, new areas that are now flourishing. So now when we are saying, the present is also the empires of the mind, and the future is also, if let's not put it like this. For example, right now you just have people who are using their mind to create things. Now what has happened is those who flourish in that is what is going to be the empires of the future. So this is the reason why I'll just give you an example over here. India is now, and this is just when I'm saying mind, always just don't think on the technological lines. Think of the fact of ideas. Okay. Now, an idea that India holds very close to is to have very good strategic partnership, is to have, let's take, for example, India is very focused on the idea of conserving environment, right? India is a global, like in the future, when you are going to look back, you're going to understand that India has now pictured itself as a global power, a superpower that is focused on environment, environmental finance, environmental impact, the Paris Agreement, all of these different aspects. India has built itself an empire on the base. Now, when I'm saying empire, don't think of the richness and everything. This is the fundamental difference between the empire of the past and the empire of the future. The empire of the future is based on the strength of your ideas. What are you trying to push forward? Are you able to get people to rally behind that idea of yours? And yes, you have so many developing countries who are ready to rally behind the idea that India is portraying. That is that we have to somehow preserve our environment right now, or we are in deep, deep trouble. So when India brings out a concept like International Solar Alliance, or India brings out a concept like LIFE, which is, for the sustainable environment, you do see takers for it. Why? Because that is what the empires of the future will be about. It will be about taking the crises and trying to tackle it with such goodwill and trying to tackle it with some kind of a vision. Okay, so now that is one thing, environment. Now let's take another example of maybe another country which is out there. You have a lot of countries that are now trying to get onto the space scene that is there. What are we again focusing over there? We need to know more about ourselves, because one day maybe when we are on the brink of some kind of a huge crisis that might extinct all of us, we need to have better ideas about us. So you have space, you have biotechnology, you have all the evolution studies that are coming about, where you're trying to flourish it, or you are trying to take that idea and you're trying to create some kind of a stronghold for yourself. And then you find takers for it. So what is the fundamental for me when this comes to this topic? The empires of the future will be empires of the mind, and it will, the keyword being empires. previously we had just empire. We had few countries being the topmost at different times. But now, because it's of the mind, and you have different countries focused on different ideas, you have the scope of having multiple empires. You have the scope of having multiple powerhouses focused on different ideas. So maybe, for example, if India is in the environment field, when it comes to digital infrastructure, you will have another country doing its major role. When it comes to space, you will have another country doing its major role. So what has happened over here is the idea of empires have now become very democratized. And then you also have, why has it become democratized? Because it's all based on the clarity of the ideas that you have, or the values that you have. So this is where this topic can take you. This topic can explore into why is it a good thing that we have empires of the mind, and how it is so good when compared to the previous empires of might which is there. So again, might and mind is not like I've given this definition so that you can clearly differentiate it in your essay writing. So I hope this is also clear. Moving forward, this is the easiest topic in this section. There is no path to happiness. Happiness is the path. So this is something that we had discussed in our sessions, and you can easily just watch that video also over there, because this is the exact same thing that we had talked about. We had talked about the fact that happiness is always seen as an end, but it is not. Happiness is also the means that where you receive some kind of another end. So this topic clearly focuses on that there is no path to happiness. Here happiness is seen as an end. Happiness is the path, showing that happiness, it is just whatever you do, this is the means to receive. You don't see it like, okay, I'm doing this to get happiness. What you're trying to focus over here is this entire journey. This is like saying about, it's not the destination that's important, it's the journey that's important. So here what happens is, this journey is what is now focused on this, or the idea of happiness primarily comes from the journey part of it, is what they are trying to tell us. Now, what do we explore over here? We can clearly explore as to what is the problem of seeing happiness as an end. Okay. Now, when you see happiness as an end, the problem of it is it makes you very, once you reach to that, you always have, because see, we are a creature that constantly has or tries to keep up with the needs that is there. So for example, once you think, okay, one kind of thing is your happiness, and you get that, and then you realize that, oh yeah, okay, it made me a little bit happy, but what if maybe I can have something much more, bigger than this, or, better than this, that can give me more happiness. So then what happens is you constantly keep changing your needs. And when you constantly keep changing your needs, or your final end that is there, what happens is you are putting yourself in a very vicious cycle of want and achievement. But in reality, if on the opposite side, you do realize that, yeah, this is not the end of it. You enjoy, you learn what is it there in this process, that can give you a happiness. So what happens is, even once you finally reach the destination, it's not like you will not ever be happy with it. What also happens is that you will understand that you've gained more. See, this is like saying that if anyone's played a video game, you keep jumping different stages and you reach to the destination. And if the game is to finally find a treasure over here, and that means you cross one level, and this can be one kind of a game. But what if all through the journey, you are getting some powers, and then you have some knowledge and everything, and finally you reach over here. So on the way, you have amassed something more, and then this just becomes one more stage in your journey. It does not become your end. Right. So similarly here also, what happens is once you have your happiness as an end, it puts you in this want and achievement. You have to get that, I have to get that kind of a thing. It also makes you greedy for it. It makes you or it does not give you the contentment that it should. And all of this can be problematic. But on the other hand, when you see happiness is the path, this is just like the example I have told you, you have so much more learnings and you do realize that the over importance given to happiness reduces. Okay, so on all of these fronts, you can explore this topic. And this is something that you can have good amount of content on that aspect. Moving forward, the doubter is a true man of science. The doubter is, who is a doubter in the first place? And who is this true man of science? When I'm saying a true man of science, what are the first things that comes to your mind? Okay, first of all, science is seen as something very objective. Science is associated and it's seen as rational also. Science is also seen as something devoid of emotions. Sciences, or at least leave the science part of it, the applications of science can be something that is seen as maybe having an impact on humanity. Let's not say good or bad, but an impact on humanity. Okay, science helps you understand things better. Okay, so these are all what science is. A true man of science is someone who propagates this idea, who let's say someone who has all of these ideas, who propagates these ideas also. Propagates in the sense that he will always be about these factors. You will always have that sense of questioning. You will, is it right? Is it wrong? Is it useful? Is it not useful? Is it having, or are you being objective about it, or are you just being slightly emotional about it? So all of these things is something that a propagator of science will have. Now the topic over here says the doubter is a true man of science. Now who is a doubter? A doubter is someone who generally is not satisfied with answers. A doubter is someone who questions the why, how of things. A doubter is someone who has a relentless quest for information. So, as information, there is not satisfied with answers. There is questioning generally why and how. So, when you have someone that is a doubter, he, at least even if he is not the creator of the science, he poses the right questions that can drive science to a direction. So, for example, let's start from the fact that maybe, the very idea that how agriculture would have been there, or the fact that how wheel was created or fire was created, it all would have started from why can we not do it this way? Or what is the point? What happens if I do it this way? So, what has happened over here is these relentless questions is what has led to something that has innovation. So, that is something that is an invention or a discovery or any of these things. So when they're saying the doubter is a true man of science, now it can be on one hand, the doubter can have all of these things, but there's also a problem. The doubter will never be satisfied with answers, which means that it sets science on a never-ending quest. So, for example, science says that the doubter asks, how did the universe come into being? Science says that the universe came out with Big Bang. Then they're like, okay, what is the proof for it? Then you get the proof for it. But then they don't believe the proof. They're like, no, this proof cannot be taken into consideration because I also see proof of the other things where maybe the universe is not expanding, maybe it's contracting. So then what happens? On one hand, the doubter gives you so much of scope for science, but at the same time, the doubter also, because of his presence, will not give you any fixed answers in science also. Why? Because you're constantly in the quest of new stuff. You're constantly in the quest of new things. So, the problem over here on this entire thing is the doubter can be the true man of science in the right questions he asks, but also the doubter will not be aiding in having a very fixed clarity on things. And that can be the flip side of it. Out of all the topics over here in this topic, you can explore about how the different doubts or in different aspects has given rise to different ideas that are there. Now again, when I'm saying true man of science, take not just technology out there, anything that we know from the beginning as an invention. For example, how did even, let's take for the Harappan civilization and the concept that they had very clear sanitation measures. That would have come from a question, obviously, as to why would, or isn't it better and neater if we do this? So then again, true man of science just means that someone who has all of these features and don't try to just compress it into biotechnology, nanotechnology, etc. Try to see it in this broad way. So that gives you the entire idea about what all can be the absolute, the doubter is aiding in what all aspects when it comes to science. Moving forward, the next set of topics start from a very familiar thing. Social media is triggering fear of missing out amongst youth, precipitating depression and loneliness. Okay, so let's start off with social media. And this is a very clear niche topic that is there. Social media in itself I could start off by saying the very idea of social media was to bring or to decimate or give out information to a large number of people at the same time, and in that process somehow create your own communities, find the people that let's start from the fact that maybe when Facebook initially started off, it was just finding people that used to be there in your life. Then it slowly started taking about finding newer people who aligned with your interest, and then as you go further, it became a complete sensation where you had not just people who aligned with you, people who divided you into groups. So that is all the flip side of it. But at the beginning, the very idea of social media, from the word social, is to create a sense of society despite not being there together in a physical manner. So it's a very virtual society, right? Now you have society of people who are aligned with your political interest, your economic interest, your, if you are, you have small business owners, you want to sell stuff, you have customers who are aligned like that, you have people who are selling stuff like that. You have, just like how in an actual society, you have all of these groups. what also happens in your virtual society also, you have all of these groups. But what is the added advantage over here? Your actual society is constrained by physical boundaries, by the people who are there, etc. Your virtual society is not constrained by any of these things. Why? Because in your virtual society, you might be someone who has a political ideology sitting in maybe Tamil Nadu or in Kerala, and then you could connect with someone who has the same ideology and might be in Canada or Russia or China or somewhere else. So what has happened over here? You have increased the breadth. You started off by trying to replicate your normal society, but in that process, this virtual society now has so many other things into it. It has anonymity. It has larger scope. It has wider audience. In general, what used to be a society that is very constrained and very small by its physical boundaries is now just opened up. Okay, so till this much if it's clear, now then the thing comes, see, even in a normal society, we do have people who, who constantly, again, Indian society is somewhere we could have easily seen that there are areas where people could get discriminated, people who are not on the boundaries of society. They're not included in society. In an actual society, it does happen. So you have maybe by the economic might, maybe by caste, maybe by religion, maybe by gender, people who are not included into the society. What generally happens to them? Those are people that we categorize as vulnerable and we try to somehow improve their lives. Right? Why? Because in an actual constrained, in a very physical society which is there, you know very clearly, you know every other person out there, you know that, oh, okay, fine, they are not included in the society because of these things. So we need to do something to include them into the society, and we need to take care of them also. This is the reason why in an actual society which is there, you have laws, you have schemes, you have programs and everything trying to include people as part of the society. You cannot discriminate on people because the idea of society goes against it. This is something that happens in your normal society, but here what has happened in the virtual society is because it has increased in breadth and the kind of reach it has, here also there are people who are not feeling included into the society. But here the problem is, it's not possible to identify them quickly. It's not possible to pull them into this grouping because of all of these factors. Anonymity, the reach, the audience, etc. And when that happens, what is going to feel bad? The people who are on the outskirts, the people who are not included into it, are constantly going to feel not being part of this phenomenon. So think of it on the same lines. In a normal society also you have this phenomenon, but the phenomenon's scale is not that large, which leads to people trying to include, because you know physically that they are there. So what happens? You try to include them into it, and you try to relieve them of your, whatever discrimination they felt. But in a social media, because of all of these factors, this missing out or this discrimination goes unchecked. Even if it's checked, it does not have actual solutions, because social media is a very new phenomena that is there. And this is what leads to youth having some kind of, leave the youth part, every other, when you look at the current generation which is there, not being included in part of this phenomena that is there, leads to having a sense of inadequacy on your own self. Also, inadequacy in the sense it can be technological inadequacy, mental inadequacy, whatever it is there. Now, all of that then leads to what? Depression and loneliness. Okay. So, now think about it. This is the beginning of it. This is by the very nature of social media, you have this happening. Now, on top of it, social media over the time has added on to having more features, which is this constant need for validation. As a few days ago, where I think around the time this was happening itself, there was this huge, even now it's going on, all the memes and everything about it, about the Coldplay tickets. Okay, so you had Coldplay, the band, planning to have a concert in India after quite some time, and then you had people scrambling for tickets of this, people who do not even know who the band is or anything, just because of the fact that it seems like something everyone else is doing. And then you had people saying, no, we could not get it, being sad about it. But in reality, if you just look at it, they might not even have, if you look at the intrinsic value of it, it's not even something that they might even enjoy. But what is it that's driving them to it? The constant need for validation, the constant need for being part of something bigger than themselves. And once this is not satisfied, is where it leads to depression and loneliness, etc. So, you could start off this essay by talking about what is the very nature of social media, where we discuss all of this, and how this, because it has a clear evolution. You first did not feel included in social media. Now you do not. It's not just the inclusion part. You are constantly like, okay, am I up to date with all the trends? Am I doing this reel? Am I doing this Snapchat? Or am I posting the snap correctly? So all of these things is what consumes you, because the reach of it is much more wider. Got it? So I would say this thing has even precipitated into your actual life also. Social media is one thing. You cannot be like, okay, I will be this person on social media and in real life I'll be this other person. Slowly your personalities merge. So what happens is, because social media has this fear of missing out thing, in real life also you end up doing all of the things for your social media. Okay, so you might not enjoy eating a certain thing, but then you eat it and you fiend this kind of different personality, saying that wow, I enjoyed it. Now a lot of food items have come about like that. A lot of new art stuff have come about like that, where you feign your interest. So what is going to in the future happen is, so you have a fear of missing out and you have depression and loneliness associated with it. It's actually the depression and loneliness of not being part of something bigger, and also eventually it's going to be a depression and loneliness of not knowing who you are. And this is very existential in nature. So you can clearly show about this evolution of this fear of missing out. It started off with not being included, then it became fear of missing out. Now it's not fear of not knowing who you are. That's going to be the future. That is going to be, again, it's not going to just end with depression and loneliness. It's going to be even much more fundamental than all of this. So this is where you can take this topic, but you start off by showing why. It shows, it has to be shown to the examiner, not just writing random examples. It has to be shown as to why this entire thing behaves in this manner, because at the end of the day, social media is just a larger, broader view or mirror of society itself. Got it? So you can show that into this topic. I hope it's clear. Now moving on to the next topic. Nearly all men can stand adversity, but to test the character, give him power. This is again one of those topics that we had discussed, and I was very happy when it came about, because this topic is something that finally just says that, see, the character of a man. Normally you say that the character of men can be tested when I'm saying men, humans, okay? So the character of anyone can be tested when they face crisis. Okay. Why? Because when you have a crisis, what happens? Based on what forms your character, your reaction to the crisis will be based on it. The reaction to the people around you will be based on it. Your emotions will be based on that, etc. And the very fact that, who you are, finding responsibility for the crisis, all of this is based on your character. Okay. But eventually, in one way or the other, people cross the crisis. Now, the topic says nearly all men can stand adversity, but to test the character of someone, give him power. Why? Because power fundamentally changes who you are and what your aspirations are. Power fundamentally changes, or the topic at least tries to explore that. Power fundamentally changes what or how you see the people around you, how you expect them to see you, and what are your reactions to them. So here the topic actually tries to say as to, you can mention about the adversity part, but how can power test character? And what or why only power? See, what does power have that adversity doesn't have? Adversity is something that puts you at the mercy of a situation. You are in a crisis. You are in something that you require the help of people. Maybe you require the help of support of things, support of people and resources and everything. So it's always better that you be nice to them. So what happens is, someone who has whatever character also, when they are faced with an adversity, they are more likely to be submissive, accepting, forgiving. All of these characters might take on to them. But on the other hand, power doesn't put you at the mercy of anything. It does not put you at the mercy of circumstances, situations, people, nothing. Which means, to have power and to still, be accepting of the fact that, okay, yeah, this is power, this is something just given to me, just like a crisis also, and behave accordingly, requires a much more higher character. Why? Because in adversity, the adversity actually might teach you to have better characteristics. But on the other hand, power is a much more different force, which actually just tests your true core thing. Because here you do not have, even if you don't show respect or even if you do not forgive or anything, you will still be held in fear and everything because of power. That means it takes an extra step from the individual to say that yes, I do have power, but I'm going to behave the way I was always behaving, and this is how I'm going to do this, because it takes more effort to show character when you do have power. So here in this topic, what you have to explore is about how the different, or when you have power, what changes. What changes is, when you do have power, you do not, or you have resources with you, you have the ability to change the people and circumstances around you. And having all of these things, what happens? You need to show, or you need to have a true sense of who you are. So you can say it's not just testing the character, it's actually checking if you have any character or not. Okay, so what all elements or what all values are there in your character, that is one thing to be checked. But if you do have a strong sense of character, that is also what is being checked. So to test the characters, that is the different qualities it has, and also the intensity of it. Intensity in the sense that how strong is it? Because you can be compassionate. And when you're given power, if that feeling is, or that character is not so important to you, you can easily ignore it. Understand? So these are the different things that you can do, or when it says test the character, it's both the different qualities that you have and the different kinds of intensity in which that character is being asserted, that you can test in this particular topic. The next topic is, all ideas having large consequences are always simple. Okay. All ideas having large consequences are always simple. Now, when it comes to saying simple ideas, what is the meaning of simple ideas? Ideas that, or anything that can solve basic problems. Ideas that fundamentally affect core human needs. Ideas that are easy to understand. And ideas for which problems already exist. What is the meaning of all of this? They've just said simple ideas. But what exactly is a simple idea? Now, for example, the wheel is a simple idea. Right. The fact that, okay, yeah, we have education done in classrooms, so let's give it out to the entire world. Simple idea. But what makes it, or what is this idea of simplicity over there? The simplicity comes from the fact that it's solving something that is very intrinsic to us, very basic to us. Okay. We need to move from one point to another. Okay, let's have a cycle. Let's have a train, a car. So these are all simple things. Why? Because it deals with a very basic problem that it has. And it also is because that problem exists. See, we don't think up nowadays. A lot of times when you look at a lot of these technologically oriented companies and all coming about, they will describe something and then you'll be like, was this a problem? Now the fact that you have something, let's say, okay, there is a new watch out there in the market, and this is you already have a watch that tells you the time. That's what watch initially came about with. Then you had a smartwatch which was giving you all the details about your health and everything. Now they have a new watch in the market called as Whoop, which is just going to tell you about your heart data. Now my question is there a need for it? Or is it solving a basic problem that you're facing? No, it's not. You have a heart problem, you're more likely to go to a hospital and you're going to see a doctor. That's what you're going to do. You're not going to wait till your watch tells you what is your breath rate or that or any of these things. So is it solving a problem at this point? No, it's not. It's just a new thing out there for which they created it, and now they're trying to find a problem for it. And that makes it very complex for people to understand as to why you need it. Okay. This is like saying, for example, I was explaining one day NFT in class. Okay. NFT is something that every time I explain in class, there is one or two students who ask me, why do we need this? We don't necessarily need it. And that is exactly the reason why they had to make an entire problem to maybe tackle that and then say that, okay, yeah, this is what this is tackling. When all of that happens, what happens again? It becomes very difficult to understand. It becomes quite alienated because this problem is not something that everybody faces. Then if it's not a problem that everybody faces, then what happens is a large number of people will not be even able to relate to your solution, will not be able to have anything coming out of it. There's no impact. Now, if there's no impact, what can you say? It will not have a large consequence. So now the question comes, so which are the ones which have large consequences? The ideas which have large consequences are the ones that solve basic problems, the ideas that are fundamentally affect core human needs, the ideas that are easy to understand, and the ideas for which problems already exist. Those are the ideas when put into action will have large consequences. And why is it that they have, or why do we call them simple? Because they have all of these features. Okay, so in this topic, what you can clearly explore is, you start off by saying you can talk about these large consequences. You have large consequences because of these things. It solves basic problems. It's understanding something that is a core human value problem. You need to talk. See, why wasn't that the internet just clicked? It's there in every other home. Everyone uses it. Why? Because it just brings you closer and it has so much of information and everything. It was a need for humans to be part or to get so much of knowledge and everything. That is why it clicks. Got it. So here, the idea is, it is having large consequence because of all of these values, all of these features, and all of these features are what makes it simple. Okay. So a simple idea is one which has all of these features, and because it has all of these features, it has large consequences. So this is what you can explore in this particular topic. So what happens here is, when it comes to at least this particular topic over here, you have the scope to take about any idea that's there, show both sides. You have ideas in the world that clicked and the ideas in the world that nobody cares about even today, right? You don't have much takers for it. Why? Because the consequences are limited. The consequences are limited because of all of these features. So you can show both the sides in this particular topic. Now moving forward to the last topic that is there. The cost of being wrong is less than the cost of doing nothing. The cost of doing nothing and the cost of being wrong. Okay, let's just do a comparative understanding. There is nothing and being wrong. This is one topic where you can explore if the cost of doing nothing. See, doing nothing always entails into having some kind of an inaction. Having some sort of an uninterest. So, see, what happens over here in doing nothing is, when do you do nothing? You do nothing when you do not care for the cause. You do nothing when you feel that you are not going to gain anything out of it. You do nothing when at some times, you are not asked to do certain things. So you feel like, yeah, no, I don't have to do this particularly. Now, this topic tries to tell us that the cost of being wrong is less than the cost of doing nothing. That means it's better to do something and be wrong than to do nothing at all. Okay? So now it comes into the question, and this is primarily, this might not always be true also. So that is another side we can explore. But think of it first. The cost of being wrong is less than cost of doing nothing. Why is it considered such a big thing if you're doing something and still being wrong? Doing something and still being wrong has that first directive, which is doing something. Doing means you cared enough for it. You were being maybe selfless about it. You are ready to spend your time and effort, which is something that every human considers very important to their own. You're doing it, and maybe the consequence of it is not ideal. So maybe it became wrong or it was not adequate, but it still shows what you were ready to do it. Okay, let's take a policy, for example. We've been trying to solve the idea about sanitation. Okay, so we've had schemes in the past where your Nirmal Bharat Abhiyan and everything, where we've tried solving the problem of sanitation. We didn't leave it at like, okay, yeah, no, nothing is going to happen, let's not do anything. But instead, the governments have tried solving it. When you try solving it, it shows intentionality that, you want to solve it. But then maybe the way, maybe some things can go wrong due to different things. It can, maybe the implementation of it, maybe the funds for it, something happened and it didn't go right. But next time when the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan comes, what happens is you take this as a learning point and you correct your mistake and you do something that is in the forward thing, right? So when you have an action and that action becomes wrong, then that wrong thing can be used to even correct your actions and do the right thing. But when you do nothing, then what happens? When you do nothing, here on one hand, it shows lack of intentionality. It shows the fact that you don't care enough. Now, this is one angle. There are a lot of situations where it's the opposite. For example, Cold War times. Okay? You had to pick a side. India did not do anything. India did not pick a side. At that point, if you were wrong, the cost of you picked one side and it was not the right side, the cost of being wrong would have been extremely large than the cost of doing nothing. In fact, here the cost of doing nothing actually became a virtue. Like, wow, in this world where you had two sides competing for your interests and everything, you choose to do nothing. And that doing nothing in itself showed certain kind of a character, showed certain kind of a grit of that country. So this is the opposite side of it. So it's not always necessary to keep doing things, because sometimes the cost of doing nothing, or you have to have immense value systems and immense vision to do nothing also. Okay, so both of these sides can be explored in this topic, and that is what makes this, in that second section, I think this is one of the most interesting topics out there, because you can clearly show these both sides in this particular topic. So I hope with this you've understood the different angles that are there in this particular essay discussion. I hope you guys try writing these essays, at least the ones that there are so many topics that can be easily written. And those who are very first time writers, first thing I want to tell you is, please don't exert yourself to try to write 1500 words, because that's not going to be possible. Start slow. Start small. At least try being like, okay, let me just figure out an intro and a conclusion, and try writing 7 to 10 paras in between. Let me try doing that. So try doing that with these topics, because trust me, there's no better ground than training yourself on the UPSC questions itself. Until we meet next time, take care and happy learning.